Good evening and welcome to the Budget Forum. Thank you for hanging with us. Just wanted to invite you all to identify yourselves in the chat. If you can put your name, your church, and your town, because there are a number of St. Peter's and a number of Christ Church churches in the diocese. So please put your name, your church, and your town. And I will now turn it over to the bishop and to Sam.
Wonderful. Hey. Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you're able to join us. And Sam is going to get us started. I'm not seeing anybody go into the chat, but if you would take the time to put your information in the chat, that would be great. There we go. Starting. And I'm going to turn over to Sam Reckford, our Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. All right, well, welcome to the 2022 budget presentation. I'm delighted that being able to do this virtually has once again made it very easy for people to join us. So welcome to all of you that did. So I can get on my screen here. Each year, I feel it's important to remind everyone that while the numbers are crunched by my finance staff and me, we don't operate in a vacuum. The Budget and Finance Committee, which includes several council members, plays a crucial role in shaping the budget. We began in September with the announcement of the budget process and solicitation of budget requests, resulting in a first draft of the budget in October. Beginning in November, we gathered fresher data, gathering feedback from the Budget and Finance Committee, and developed a revised budget. In January, when we should have a clearer picture of our pledge income, we'll likely amend it in the Budget Committee and bring it to Council for approval. So there is no vote tonight. This is simply an information session about where we are as of the 8th of December. And now let's get started. Here's the quick overview. As you can see, our revenues are projected to drop about $150,000 and our expenses only about $100,000. So before I bring this back to Council next month, we're going to have to find another $56,000 in income or cut our expenses by that amount to balance the budget. The drop in revenues and expenses is largely tied to a change that we're making in some expenses that have historically been covered by the trustees, which I'll explain in a few minutes. Reporting pledge income by year is a bit complicated because a significant amount of it comes in after the end of the year in the form of late payments and reconciliation payments after parochial reports have been filed. At the close of each year, we estimate both our uncollectible pledges and our likely receipts. To the extent that the final figures differ from that estimate, the difference becomes part of the following year figures. Those of you who have been following the budget this year know this had a particular impact on us this year because we actually had to provide refunds to a lot of churches that had overpaid based on their actual operating income. Usually it's the other way around. For 2022, we're estimating that our pledge revenue will be flat with this year at $1,780,000. I'm hoping that we'll do better than that and recover some of what we dropped in the last 2 years, but it's too early to tell since pledges aren't even due for another 2 weeks. Here's a graphical look at our pledges over the last 20 years. So we reached peak pledge income of about $2.8 million in 2002, it's a long time ago. Then it decreased pretty significantly over the next 8 years to a low of $2,047,000 in 2010, which is what you see right about here. In 2011, I showed an end to that slide with pledge income of about 2.1 million. And we stayed in a very tight range here. You can see right along here between 2 million, 2.1 million through 2019 before it cracked in 2020 with the onset of the pandemic. While we truly hope that this recent downturn is a blip, a brief aberration, the chart illustrates an aspect of the structural problem that we have and to which I will return later. We have two sources of income from the DIT. The first is investment income. That's the income distribution from some funds that are set up to support the market. Market's up a lot this year. It's up very nicely. And we did pretty well last year. But because it's a 4.5% draw off of a 12-quarter average that ends on September 30th, notice a lot of that market increase recently may have been since September 30th, the bump in any given year isn't too large. For 2022, it'll be almost 5%, which is very significant by historical standards. But this year, we're predicting a $120,000 bump a pop, because we anticipate 9 months of income from the new Diocesan Permanent Endowment, which we just agreed to fund about an hour ago. And so we put in $3.75 million into a Diocesan Permanent Endowment that will generate a kind of a run rate of, we'll call it $160,000 a year or so. We're going to take 9 months of income this year because we need to put the money in at the beginning of the year, give it 3 months to start earning, and then take distributions off of it in the latter 3/4 of the year. So we get a big jump in there and sort of an increasing reliance on investment income, as you can see from that. The second source is fee income. That's 0.25% on most of the balances in the DIT. It's charged quarterly in arrears, so we immediately benefit from a rising market. The big jump in the market this year led to much higher than expected fee income. You can see we're projecting at almost $180,000 when we only budgeted $163,000. And we expect it to be higher still in 2020 because, of course, we're now starting at the current level, whereas over the course of 2021, we built up to that level. And so our quarterly fees got higher each quarter as the year went on. And with the best one will be the last one if the market doesn't do anything odd in the next few weeks. On a rental income, we have 2 tenants here. We had a little bit of a drop this year, a bit below budget, because we gave some rent relief to Sadie Nash, our tenant on the first floor, for about $3,000, but we expect it to go back to steady state next year. Ever since the budget shortfall relating to the 2008 downturn, the bishop has been voluntarily contributing some money from his or her discretionary fund to the council budget. 2 years ago, Bishop Hughes increased that amount by $60,000 to help pay for the new missioner for stewardship position. Over time, I'd like to reduce or eliminate this contribution entirely, since it really isn't appropriate. My hope is to cut it by $15,000 this year and make similar or larger cuts in future years, as to gradually reduce it over the next 5 or 6 years, perhaps, maybe sooner. After running a small deficit in 2020, we expect a 2021 surplus of at least $50,000. With luck, it will be higher. As we've done in many recent years, we're going to roll that amount into the following budget. However, this time we're going to budget $100,000, which is a bit aggressive, and it includes some money from prior surpluses that were never budgeted or spent. PPP Forgiveness was a godsend this year, as we would have really had a budget crisis without it. Sadly, there will be no PPP money next year. The Alleluia Fund is another significant income contributor. As you probably know, since the inception of the Alleluia Fund, the income has been funding a significant portion of the Alleluia grants, and currently about half of the Alleluia grants. Since much of the money arrives in December, it's too early to know how likely we are to do, how well we're likely to do this year. We do assume that we'll meet our goal, and if extra money comes in, we will give it away. The direct administration fees are reimbursements for service provided by the council employees to the trustee, provided by council employees to the trustees. It includes the property manager's full compensation, as well as modest portions of other employees, such as my staff and me. As you can see, the numbers are pretty steady from year to year. For many years, the trustees have been contributing funds from the undesignated proceeds of sold churches to cover 2 things. One is the underfunded lay pension plan, and the second is the bishop search and call. Because we now have funds available from sold churches to fund the pension plan and endow the bishop search, again, both actions that we just did in the allocation of the proceeds of sold churches today, we are going to stop funding these. And as a matter of fact, what you can see here is I'm actually not going to fund them for this year, because what we were doing is we were taking these assets and using them for one-time, basically treating them like one-time expenses. And so with the new endowment, there's really no reason to put money away today. That would just be, in effect, it's moving money from one pocket to the other pocket and then back again. And so we won't even bother to fund that. There's a small amount of money here. The $8,100 has to do with a contribution that the trustees have been making toward the pensions for a few of our current employees who were grandfathered under the old plan. I think this will probably be the last year they do that, but that's been out there for a few years. And since our budget relied on it, I'm going to leave that in there. But we now, in future years, since this will be essentially fully funded, not yet, but over the next few years with the sales of the proceeds from closed churches, we don't feel any need to make any further contributions via the council budget, right? So it'll get funded, it will be fully funded, but not via the council budget. While the overall change in salaries is less than 2% from 2021 projected levels, it incorporates a 3% raise for the staff. This partially compensates for the fact that there was no increase in 2021. The large drop in benefits expense is mostly attributable to not having to contribute $100,000 to fund the pension plan. We were able to reduce post-retirement, and that's just what I was talking about with that. We had matched income of basically $130,000 from the trustees. We spent $100,000 of it went into this, this benefits number, the $730,000 benefits expense to fund the lay pension plan. The other $30,000 for the bishop search and call. We'll get to that one. But so that the income and that we're reducing offsets expenses that we're reducing by the same amount. So no net impact on the budget. But that's why you see a big drop, is we're not funding the $100,000 there. So another way of looking at it is the non lay employees retirement portion of benefits is going from about $635,000 to $631,000 next year. We're able to reduce post-retirement medical costs by 25% this year due to a plan change at CPG, where they are switching to a Medicare Advantage plan from a Medicare Supplement plan. It saves us about 25%, which is about $10,000 in savings for us. So that was a nice thing this year. Cynthia McChesney asked for her budget to double next year as she rolls out some ambitious plans for stewardship education and lay the groundwork for a capital campaign. The Budget and Finance Committee is recommending an increase to only $22,400, which should be sufficient for a number of new activities, but not her entire wish list. The 2021 convention expense was over budget, despite being a much smaller than usual convention, because we didn't charge any of our costs to the participating churches. Plans for the 2022 convention are in flux, as you've heard, but we hope to hold the expenses to $14,000, or if it is a more conventional convention, charge the balance to the participants as we used to do. Sorry, and that's my bird is here too. Occasionally has to add something to the conversation. During the pandemic, a committee comprised of representatives of our diocese and the Diocese of New Jersey got together to address concerns about the mental health of our clergy. They proposed, and the two dioceses funded, first a hotline and then a warm line, neither of which got many calls. Based on that lack of use and the fact that we're moving into a more normal environment, we've decided to eliminate funding for this program. The sense among the bishop staff is that this care can be sufficiently obtained through mental health coverage available via the DHP. We don't have a firm sense of what the financial needs will be for the 3 new commissions that are studying our racial history and proposing justice initiatives. So we're allocating $5,000 for it. For their ancillary costs, and one way or another, we'll figure out how to pay what their expenses are. Neither we nor they have any idea of what they're going to need, as they're really just starting up now. Once again, we are contributing 100% to the National Church Ask. The 2022 contribution is based upon our 2020 operating income. So just remember that year was down just a little bit, and so our pledge drops a little bit. For the past few years, we've been granting $70,000 directly from the budget, plus 100% of Alleluia Fund donations to outreach grants. So in 2022, if we collect $70,000 in donations, we'll grant $140,000. If we raise more, we'll give more. Administration is one of the 3 areas where we've seen significant cost savings due to working from home. We've been able to get rid of a copier and save a lot on meals, entertainment, postage, and temporary help. The 2022 budget assumes a full year at our current activity level, which is somewhere between pre-pandemic and depths of pandemic levels. We were saving quite a bit of money by locking our bishop safely in her house and having her connect to the outside world via Zoom. But now that she is out and about, we need to return her budget to something closer to pre-pandemic levels. By endowing the search and call, we will no longer need to set aside any allotments for that. So we've got some near-term challenges. First is we need to find a way to balance this budget, and we believe that it will need to be done without cutting further into our staffing levels. There's just not, as you look at those numbers there, there's just not very much that can be cut. Maybe trimmed along the edges, but finding $50,000, we can't cut staff, and we think finding $50,000 in cuts will be very tough. We have almost no visibility into the 2022 pledge income. So, much of the uncertainty that individuals and churches faced last year has passed, but will that result in higher pledge income? We just don't know, but we'll have a much better idea in a couple of weeks. And we still have our long-term challenges. Roughly 2/3 of our income comes from pledges, 2/3 of our expense goes to compensation. The former is flat or falling, and the latter typically grows at 2 to 3% a year. So is our funding model sustainable? I asked that question again. The answer is still no. While the bishop has stressed and will undoubtedly continue to stress the importance of stewardship, both to individuals that give and to the churches that both receive and provide, we need to think seriously about, sorry, I'm going to go back, about our reliance on pledge income. We took a nice first step in that direction with the allocation of the proceeds of sold churches that was approved earlier this evening. And that has obviously provided an initial bump to our investment income. Honestly, we need a lot more. We're going to have to do more. In the near future, we expect to look at multiple solutions, which might include expanding annual direct giving to the diocese, some capital fundraising for new endowments, or repurposing funds that we already have at our disposal, but are perhaps not being put to the optimal use. So we're going to keep working on these issues over the next year with the council, of course, and a number of you will be in a leadership working group that is focused on them. I hope that we can make some real progress. And with that, I'd like to open it up to questions, and I will stop sharing the screen. John, I assume you'll traffic cop them too.
I certainly can. Bishop, if that's okay by you.
That's fine. If you have a question, if you either raise your hand or use the raise hand feature so that John can see you.
And once again, folks who've come to join us this evening, please put in the chat your name, your church, and town that the church is located in. And I see our first question is Robert Ross. So Robert, go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, thank you, John. I have two questions. The first question is about the investment income. And I noticed we have budgeted a sizable jump in investment income. And my question is that bump, or is a significant part of that bump due to a change in the mix of investments? That is, are we taking more risk?
No. So basically what we do, the way the trustees hold all of our funds, and the trustees mandate a 4.25% distribution off of a 12-quarter average. So it is totally unrelated to what we're invested in. Now, that said, we haven't changed what we're invested in. So TIAA manages the investments for the DIT, and they have a long-term allocation strategy, which basically has is unchanged, and it has been unchanged in recent years. They fiddle around every now and then with some of the funds that they invest in, but that hasn't changed at all. No, so the jump just has to do with two things. One is that we have a higher average 12-quarter balance, and the second and the much bigger thing is the funds that we are allocating to the new diocesan permanent endowment, which I described earlier, that's going to generate $120,000 for us. Just to be clear, we get to draw that money whether the market goes up or down. It's not dependent on that. So the way that whole 4.25% draw works is it is off of a smoothed average, and so at any given time you have a delayed effect, or let's call it a diluted and delayed effect of any change in the market. So even though we're putting in new money on January 1st there, and the market may go up, the market may go down, but we will draw off basically, just over 1% each quarter, regardless.
Okay, thank you very much. And the second question is, salaries and benefits are budgeted at 1.9 million. And how many employees is that for?
We have 14 employees right now.
Okay. Which is the same as it was?
Which is one less. So we dropped one employee last year. And so what you saw in last year's numbers was in round numbers, you have 14 and a half employees because we had one employee for half the year last year. And so we started the year with 15, we ended with 14, and this budget is for the same 14.
Thanks very much, Sam.
Thank you, Robert. Any other questions? Lorna, is that your hand up? No, it's not. Sorry. Any other questions? That's a sign of a good presentation, Sam.
Thank you, John. I try to keep it clear and simple.
And for those who that want to see it, please do let them know that there will be an opportunity again on January 11th. Either it will be this tape and Sam to answer questions after, or Sam will make the presentation all over again and take questions after. So thank you all.